The road to Avalanche Ridge was narrower than any of us expected. We had been driving for nearly 6 hours, when the asphalt gave way to a winding path of packed snow and ice. The mountains loomed over us, dark silhouettes, cutting into a fading winter sky. The sun dipped low, and everything beyond the windshield felt isolated, almost suffocating. "Dude, this GPS has to be wrong," Mike muttered from the driver's seat, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. The old Subaru wagon shuddered as it crawled up the incline. "It's not wrong," Emily said from the back, scrolling through the Airbnb listing. Avalanche Ridge, 2 bedrooms, wood-burning stove, unforgettable views. This is it. Unforgettable. Views, I repeated. Yeah, if we don't die getting there. The cabin finally came into sight just as the first snowflakes began to fall. It sat on the edge of a steep drop, its roof heavy with old snow, windows dark against the encroaching dusk. No other lights, no other cabins, just us and the mountain dot we unloaded quickly, stomping through snow that reached nearly to our knees. Inside, the cabin smelled faintly of damp wood and something metallic, old coins or rusted nails. It was small but cozy. Stone fireplace, 2 tiny bedrooms, and a trapdoor in the corner of the living room that I assumed led to a crawl space or storage. Kind of creepy, right? I whispered to Emily as she unpacked groceries. "It's rustic," she corrected. "You're just paranoid." Maybe I was. But as the wind picked up outside and the sky turned black, the silence of the place settled heavy in my chest. No cars, no distant hum of civilization. Just the creak of wood and the whisper of snow against glass. We lit the fireplace, cooked a frozen pizza, and tried to pretend everything felt normal. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something about the cabin, about this entire ridge felt wrong. The first night. It started with knocking dot. It was faint at first, barely audible over the crackle of the fire. I thought maybe it was wind, or tree branches scraping the roof. But as the others dozed off on the couches, I heard it agree, knocks, dot, knock, dot, knock, dot. I froze. It wasn't coming from the door. It was coming from beneath the floor. I sat there, holding my breath, straining to listen. The knocks came again, louder this time, echoing from the direction of the trapdoor. "Mike," I whispered, shaking him awake. He groaned. "What?" "Listen." He sat up, blinking, and then we both heard it slow, deliberate knocking rising from below our feet. "The hell is that?" he muttered, grabbing the fireplace poker like it would actually do anything. Emily joined us, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Is someone outside?" "No," I whispered. "It's coming from under the cabin." The 3 of us stared at the trapdoor. The metal latch rattled once, softly, as though someone was on the other side. Mike cursed under his breath. "Nope, I'm not opening that." But none of us slept after that. We just sat in silence, listening to the wind howl outside, and the occasional knock from below. By morning, the storm had worsened. The snow outside was waist deep, and the narrow mountain road we'd driven up was completely buried. We were trapped. "Perfect," Mike muttered, peering out the frosted window. "We're officially snowed in." "Maybe it's just pipes," Emily offered, trying to sound calm. "Old cabins creak. Wood shifts. Pipes don't knock," I said. "We tried calling for help, but of course there was no cell service. The only thing we could do was wait for the storm to pass." That afternoon, when the knocking started again, louder this time, we decided to check. The trapdoor, the latch was rusted, stiff with age. Mike used the poker to pry it open, and the 3 of us peered down into darkness. A wooden ladder disappeared into what looked like a crawl space or maybe an old basement. The smell that hit. US was rancid, a mix of mildew and rot. "Hello?" Mike called, his voice cracking slightly. Something moved below soft shuffling. Then silence. "Animals," Emily whispered. "Has to be animals." "Big animals." I muttered. We lowered a flashlight into the space. The beam illuminated stone walls, old wooden support beams, and something else scratches. Dozens of them etched deep into the stone. Claw marks. Fingernail marks. Mike swallowed hard. Nope, we're shutting this. But that night, the knocks returned harder, more frantic. And this time, there was whispering. We barely slept. Every time my eyes closed, I heard it. Faint voices, muffled but urgent. Like people whispering from behind a wall. By dawn, the storm hadn't let up. Snow slammed against the windows, wind howled through cracks in the cabin walls, and the whispers. Below grew louder. Emily finally snapped. We have to see what's down there. We can't just sit here waiting for whatever that is. Mike argued, but in the end, curiosity and fear won. We grabbed our flashlights, pried open the trapdoor again, and climbed down. The air was colder below, damp and heavy. The crawl space opened into a narrow tunnel we hadn't noticed before, an old mine shaft carved into the mountain itself. What the hell is this place? I whispered. The walls were lined with old timbers, many rotted through. Strange carvings, symbols I didn't recognize were scratched into the stone. Bones littered the floor. Animal bones, mostly. At least, I hoped they were. We followed the tunnel deeper until the light from the cabin disappeared behind us. The whispers grew louder, overlapping. Impossible to understand, but undeniably human. Then we saw it. A wooden door at the end of the tunnel, partially collapsed. Chains hung from its frame, broken long ago. The whispers were loudest here, just beyond that door. Mike stepped closer. Hand outstretched, something slammed into the door from the other side. We ran. We barricaded the trapdoor with furniture. Hearts pounding as the whispers rose to a fever pitch below us. The cabin shook. The storm howled. And then silence. Hours passed. Maybe minutes. It was impossible to tell. When the knocks returned, they weren't coming from below anymore. They were at the windows. Snow-streaked faces peered in, faces pale and sunken, eyes black and lifeless. Dozens of them surrounding the cabin, pressing hands to the glass. Emily screamed. Mike grabbed the poker. I froze. The front door burst inward, snow and wind and figures flooding inside. They moved unnaturally, jerking and twisting, mouths open in silent screams. Their touch burned with cold. We fought. We failed. The last thing I remember was being dragged toward the trapdoor, their hands pulling me into the darkness below. The whispers swallowed me whole. When rescuers finally reached Avalanche Ridge a week later, they found the cabin half buried in snow. The door hung open. Inside, the furniture was overturned. The fireplace cold. No bodies were ever recovered. Only claw marks, fresh ones, leading down into the tunnels beneath. The ski resort was already shutting down when I convinced myself to take one last run. Most of the crowd had gone in for the night. The sun was dipping low, painting the snow in pink and gold. The mountains around me stretched endlessly vast. White slopes, jagged ridges, and forests of black pines swaying in the wind. I was 22, on a solo trip I couldn't really afford, trying to prove something to myself after a rough breakup. The mountain, quiet and nearly empty, felt like freedom. The lift attendant looked surprised when I skied up. Last chair, he said. Storm's rolling in. Be quick. I nodded and slid into the seat. The metal bar locked in front of me, and the chairlift lurched forward, carrying me above the silent slope. For the first few minutes, it was peaceful, just the hum of the cables and the crunch of my skis swinging in the air. But halfway up, the lift jolted violently. It stopped. At first, I thought it was temporary. Maintenance, maybe. But then the wind picked up, whistling through the trees below, and I realized how alone I was. The resort lights at the base glowed, faintly, far behind me. Ahead, only darkness and the shadow of the mountain. Minutes passed. My legs started to shake from the cold. No announcement. No movement. Nothing. That's when I saw something move in the trees below. Hello? I shouted down, voice cracking against the wind. No response, just silence. Broken by the creak of the lift cables swaying in the gusts. The figure below was hard to make out, half hidden in the tree line. At first I thought it was a skier. Latecomer, like me, maybe stuck too. But then I noticed how still it stood. Perfectly still, head tilted upward, watching me. I waved. Hey, I'm stuck. Can you... The figure stepped backward into the trees and vanished. A sick feeling curled in my stomach. The storm rolled in fast. Snowflakes thickened to whiteout conditions, stinging my face and blurring everything beyond a few feet. My gloves were soaked, my toes numb. Every creak of the chairlift sounded like it might snap. After nearly an hour, I spotted movement again. This time, closer. Shapes more than one emerged from the woods. 4, maybe 5 figures trudging through the snow below me. They didn't have skis. They weren't dressed for the cold. And their faces were pale, almost gray. Like corpses pulled from ice dot, they stood directly beneath my chair, staring up in unison. Panic hit hard. I screamed until my throat ached, waving my arms, hoping anyone would hear. The figures didn't react. They just watched. One of them began to climb the lift tower. Bare hands on frozen steel, moving impossibly fast despite the slick ice. The others followed. No, I muttered, fumbling with the safety bar. It wouldn't budge. My gloves slipped on the icy metal. The climbers reached the cable, crawling toward me like spiders. Their movements were jerky, unnatural, but fast. Too fast. Desperation made me do something reckless. I jumped. The fall knocked the air from my lungs. Pain shot through my leg, but adrenaline kept me moving. I grabbed my skis, ditched them almost immediately in the deep snow, and stumbled toward the tree line. Behind me, I heard them drop from the lift. Soft thuds in the snow. Low, guttural breaths. They were following me. The trees offered some cover from the wind, but not from them. I could hear them crashing through the snow behind me, unbothered by the cold, relentless in their pursuit. I ran until my chest burned, lungs raw from the freezing air. The forest was endless white and black, snow and shadow. Every tree looked the same. Then I found it, a small service shack, half buried in snow. I threw myself inside, slamming the door shut. Darkness. Silence. Except for my ragged breathing, I wedged a broken ski pole against the door and pressed my back to it, listening. Footsteps approached. Slow, deliberate. Crunching snow. Then. Tapping. Tap. 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 Knuckles or claws against the thin wooden walls. Moving around the shack, circling me. Whispers followed. Soft, unintelligible, like wind through dead leaves. But I understood one thing. My name. They were whispering my name. I lasted until dawn. Somehow when rescuers found me. I was half frozen, crouched in the shack, mumbling nonsense. They said the lift malfunctioned during the storm and stranded me overnight. They didn't believe me about the figures. They didn't believe me about the whispers. But here's the thing, when I was packing my gear to leave the hospital, I found something in my coat pocket. A strip of faded lift ticket. Not mine, old, dated 1974, written on the back. In smeared pencil were 3 words: stay off nights. I was part of the volunteer ski patrol for the resort that winter, and off the record gig. That paid in free lift tickets and the occasional adrenaline rush. Most of the calls we handled were routine. Twisted knees, lost kids, the usual. But that night was different. It was close to midnight when the radio crackled to life. Distress beacon. Northern Pass. 3 snowboarders. Not responding. The Northern Pass wasn't on the resort map. It was an old backcountry route closed decades ago after a series of fatal avalanches. The kind of place locals warn newcomers about. Coordinates? I asked. Static. Then a faint reply. Signal. Faint. Hurry. We assembled fast, me, Mark, and a newer guy named Felix. The storm outside was brutal. Wind howling through the pines. Snow blinding even with headlamps. But 3 missing kids in sub-zero temperatures? We didn't hesitate. We strapped on snowshoes, clipped radios to our jackets, and followed the faint GPS galloping up into the abandoned past Dot by the time we reached the ridge. The resort lights were long gone, swallowed by darkness. Ahead lay nothing but endless white and the skeletal remains of Avalanche fences jutting from the snow like ribs. That's when we saw the first sign, half buried in ice, letters barely legible. Do not enter. 2 hours into the climb, we found their camp. The tents were shredded, poles bent inward like something had collapsed them from above. Snowboards lay scattered, half buried in drifts. No tracks leading away, just the howling wind and silence. So heavy it rang in my ears. Looks like they panicked, Mark muttered, sweeping his flashlight. Maybe an avalanche scare? Where are the boards? Felix asked Dot. We found them, or rather, we found what was left. Splintered wood, bindings, snapped. One board looked like it had been bitten clean through. Dot, my stomach turned. This isn't avalanche damage. As we searched the site, I noticed something strange. The snow around the tents wasn't fresh. It was hard-packed icy, as though it had been frozen in place for years. Despite the missing snowboarders being reported just yesterday, Dot, Felix found the first body, or what we thought was a body, a shape under the snow, human-sized. We dug frantically, only to uncover clothing, empty, stiff as wood, frozen in mid-motion, as if the person had vanished out of it. Where the hell are they? Felix whispered. Dot. Mark didn't answer. He was staring into the darkness beyond the camp, at the faint glow moving between the trees. The light flickered pale blue, unnatural, pulsing like a heartbeat. Dot. At first, I thought it was another rescuer. Maybe someone with a lantern? But it moved wrong, gliding through the trees instead of walking, weaving in and out of the storm like it wasn't affected by the wind at all. Dot. We followed, because what else could we do? The signal from the distress beacon was strongest in that direction. The deeper we went, the stranger everything felt. The air grew warmer somehow, despite the snow thickening around us. The trees were coated in frost, but the frost was moving, crawling along the bark in delicate patterns that shifted as we watched. Felix whispered, "You guys hear that?" I did. A faint hum, low and rhythmic, vibrating in my chest. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't anything natural. Dot. The glow stopped ahead, hovering in a small clearing. As we stepped into the open, the snow beneath our feet cracked like glass. Dot. And we saw them. The missing snowboarders. Dot. Frozen mid-scream. 3 figures. Encased in solid ice, their faces twisted in terror. Mark swore and stumbled backward. Felix vomited into the snow. I just stood there, paralyzed. Dot. The ice around the snowboarders wasn't solid. It pulsed faintly. Veins of blue light running through it like living tissue. Get them out. Mark shouted, pulling at his axe. Don't. I started, but it was too late. He swung, shattering the ice around one of the figures. The humming stopped. The forest went silent. Dot. And then the cracking began. Not from the ice. Mark had broken from the ground itself. Deep, echoing cracks reverberated beneath us as fissures spread through the snow. Something massive shifted below, pushing upward. Run! I yelled. Dot. The ground erupted. A surge of white and blue burst from beneath, blinding us. I caught glimpses. A shape too large to comprehend. Limbs, or were they branches? Reaching skyward, studded with eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. Felix screamed as one of the limbs wrapped around him and pulled him into the fissure. His scream cut off instantly. Mark and I ran. We didn't stop running until the storm swallowed the clearing behind us. My lungs burned. My legs felt like lead. But the humming that low, thrumming hum followed us all the way down the mountain. Dot. When we finally stumbled into the resort, hours later, half frozen and incoherent, they didn't believe us. They sent a proper rescue team the next morning. Dot. They found nothing, no campsite, no frozen bodies. No fissures in the snow. Dot. Just untouched wilderness. Dot. Mark quit patrol the next day. You won't talk to me anymore. I think he knows what I know, that we didn't survive that night. Not really. Dot. Because sometimes late at night, when I close my eyes, I still feel the hum in my chest. Still see the blue glow creeping along my bedroom walls. And I know it's only a matter of time before the mountain calls me back.